EU Parliament wants to suspend Hungary's right to vote. Like it is a privilege to vote, not a right. You see, people are a lot of times confused about what is a right and what is a privilege. A right you cannot take away. No one can. Only God. Because you got them from God. That's why it's called a right by law. Everything else is a privilege. So, if you take away Hungary's rights, EU, why should the Hungarians stay in the EU? Why should any country stay in the EU when you look upon what's happening to Hungary? We steal as an EU their money, keep it in our wallet in the EU, not giving the money. Now imagine it happens to you. Your boss needs to pay you your salary, you earned it, it's your money, and he refuses to pay. That would piss you off, right? It would piss me off. So now think on the bigger picture, and we keep Hungary's rightful money as a blackmail away from them until they vote by their God-given rights in the way we want, the EU, Brussels. And if you don't vote, then in our way we will not give you your money. And also, if that doesn't change your mind, then we will just suspend your rights. Of course, the writing has been on the wall back then with the collapse of Greece, when they just installed a banker being the supreme leader in Greece. The whole EU, all the countries were looking like, well, it's normal that some group of people, in this case bankers, decide we will take this guy or this woman and put them in charge of this country. What does that tell you? That does tell you that that country is owned. By whom? Yes, most likely by the bank who put a interim manager on their assets, namely Greece. And then you had Cyprus with the banks. It's not your money anymore, it's the bank's money, and we will just skim off everything above 100,000 euro. A lot of companies got into trouble back then with Cyprus. And very predictable, it became like the standard law across Europe. In Holland, they couldn't wait until they could implement this as a law. Yeah, too big to fail. Political immunity. Democracy. The EU is a very obvious dictatorship. It is a totalitarian dictatorship. I keep saying it. And the only thing that's gonna save us from this is if other countries, people follow the example of Orban, to have a straight back, not giving up your sovereignty. It's your right, then stick to it. Don't give it up. I don't give up my rights. Try to do that. It will be very personal. It will be very personal if you want to take away my God-given rights. Really. Try to do that. And it should be. But also as a nation, it's very personal then. So, Orban is right by holding his back straight. And the only solution is if people demand that those leaders in their communities who have these traits, to have a straight back, to stand for a principle, that those leaders are on the front, on the forefront of this war, because there is a war against you, European people, a war against you, not a war against Hungary, Orban, a war against you. Orban just stands in the way, just like a Trump stands in the way in the USA. Orban is standing in the way in the EU to fulfill their agenda. IDF in Germany is standing in their way. Geert Wilders is not standing in their way. No. The Dutch, they are fooled if they think Geert Wilders is standing in the way of those globalists. He's not. He just wants to make sure that the Dutch in this global agenda can play their part without being annoyed by some of the consequences. He wants to reduce those consequences for Holland. He doesn't give a fuck about Germany in that regard, or France, or whatever. He might pretend, but he only cares about that part. But if Uncle Sam, USA, tells him to jump, he will only ask how high and when am I allowed to come down again. That's what Wilders will do, and especially if it comes from Israel. Well, here is some news, Mr. Wilders. Would it make fucking sense if you stop bombing, they stop coming? If you want to protect Holland, if you want to protect the European way of life, just make sure we stop bombing, they stop coming. Then take a example from the Russians, how they are rebuilding Mariupol and rebuild their countries. And you will see people start to move home. In my opinion, rebuilding their countries is a better way of spending all that money that we now spend on destroying it. We are spending that money regardless, whether you like it or not, right? So, one missile, one Patriot, 1 million. Yeah, that is some expensive firework, and I bet my ass for that one missile I can build for that 1 million. I can build in Yemen, in Gaza, in wherever. I can build probably at least, let's say, 10,000 per house, so 100,000 houses. 100,000 families you can shelter again. Stop bombing and they stop coming. It's really simple. It's really simple. But back to your rights. Could you demand this from your governments? Huh? Is it your right? Just look what they do. They suspend the rights of a total nation, of a total country, of a total people, the Hungarians. And the Hungarians, so they are not banning Orban. Are you paying attention, European? They are banning a people, a nation, a country, the Hungarians, from having a voice in the EU. So, what makes you think that you, the weaker countries, the smaller countries, pardon that I say it like this, but it's true, the weaker countries of Europe, the EU, what makes you think that what happens now to the Hungarians, again, pay attention, this is not happening to Orban, this is happening to the Hungarians. What makes you Romanians think it will not happen to you? Because it won't happen to Klaus Johannes. It will happen to you, Romanians. What makes you think, Slovaks, that it will not happen to you? What makes you think, Bosnians, Croatians, etc., that it will not happen to you? Slovenia, Baltics. But you already know it will happen to you. That's why you follow like a fucking little lapdog. Sitting in the lap of von der Leyen, shaking like a reed in the wind. Huh? No balls, no backbone. Who knows? What happens now in Germany will lead to a German exit. Who knows? Who knows? It might lead to a European Maidan. That's my wish for years, to break up this monstrosity of EU dictatorship. Not this idea. I like the idea of a united Europe. I really do. And I think most of us like that idea. We Europeans. To be a united Europe. But not in this shape and form. Because we, the European people, don't have a say in it. What happens in Brussels? Those so-called leaders in Brussels are not even elected by us. Yes, you can elect some EU MP now. Huh? To give you the illusion that the EU has any legitimacy. Again, English is not my native language. But, you know, that voting is fake if you now look at what is happening to Hungary and the Hungarian people by being disenfranchised, by basically being put to the sidelines. You and your vote don't count. If you still think that the EU is like the greatest thing that ever happened in your lifetime, think again. It is the biggest nightmare that you will experience. The honeymoon years are over. Time to pay up. Time to finalize the lock and key on this new, I don't know, you can only compare it with the USSR, I suppose. This is the the same. It's not different than what happened in Russia and all the satellite states. I am sure that our European brothers and sisters remember that system. I am sure. My generation, for sure. You East Germans out there. Those who see what's coming. Those Romanians, those Hungarians, those Czechs, Slovaks who, if they are clever, the Poles and the Baltics as well, that they open their eyes. But hey, they just think that it is a Russian thingy to have these kind of systems. So they blindly, in their Russophobic fear, run into this cage of the EU. But the rest of you, tell me, what did Russia, I'm not talking about the USSR, I'm talking about what did Russia do to you after the 90s? Yeah, what did they do? Did they invade you? Did they come with troops in your country, establish bases in your country, claiming we established these bases to protect you? Like they did in the USSR time. They had military bases controlled by them in your countries. Now the USA has these bases. The USA has, just like the USSR had, the USSR has the finger on those missiles, on those weapons of mass destruction installed in your countries back then. Now the USA has the finger on the trigger, not you. Your government, your people has nothing to say in this matter. If the USA decides to start an attack on Russia with their missiles from your countryside, then they will just do it. Yeah, they don't give a shit about the fallout. They don't care that the Russian response will be obviously from where this missile might be launched. And since it won't be launched from the USA, needless to say, I suppose, where it will hit. Yes, in your backyard, not in the USA. So here we have the USA, bankers, army. It's the bankers' army, the USA. Who else needs so much fake money to boost a global mercenary army? Those globalists. Who else? Look at the expenditure of all the other nations in defense. Reasonable expenditures to keep their country safe. You need a military. I was professional in the army, so you need a military. I believe in a military. Every country should have a military, and every country has the God-given right as a nation, as a people, to defend themselves, be it as a single person or be it as the collective. It's your God-given right. And the best way to do it is to form an army, a militia, if you like. And that brings me to why I think that this Project Europe should be in a total different form. I believe in a Project Europe, I believe in a Project EU, not EU like this, but if you want to go with the term we have, European Union, but it should be a union of federations or federation of republics. A union of federations. Why do I say a union of federations? Because we should break this union up in smaller blocks. The bloc in the south has other interests, other common interests. If you are living in the region of the Mediterranean, you face other problems, other crises, etc., than if you are living in the far north. And those districts should, if you want to call it like that, should form a federation. So, for example, the former satellite states of the USSR should also form a federation next to superseding an EU, and then make a union of these federations, but each bloc with a right to have their interests first when it is contradicting against their interest. Every bloc should look after their own interest first, and they should have militias. So you could also claim that everyone would be in the army. If you don't want to call it militias, then just by default you turn 18, man or woman, and you become part of the army. Mandatory. Just with one exception to the system in most of the countries. Now we're gonna arm you after, of course, you passed all your tests, just like in the regular army. Now we're gonna arm you, and you will have this weapon at home. And you will be a standing army, a standing militia, who also is guarding its own national interest from the inside. And if a government then, or the EU, that bigger body of countries, of nations, decides to become a despot, a tyrant, then those militias are able to defend itself from it. Just like in America, the shining beacon of light and hope that we follow in the EU, in Europe. Correct? Correct. So who can be against this? Maybe the American republics, because they are republics, not democracies. They are republics, and they are a federation of republics. Maybe the American republics need to remember that they can break up too. Texas, with this border crisis, you can just say to Washington, you know what, we're gonna step out. Goodbye. Give us back our share and we will take care of our problem ourselves. Right? It's time to remember this. The same for Europe. It's time for the Hungarians to see where the sun is shining. Beautiful sunny day today. -9, -10 and sunny. But it's time that you see where the sun is shining. And the sun is shining when you climb out of that valley that is called the EU. The valley of the death. Though I walk the valley of the shadows of death, I will fear no evil. Well, you better start to see where the light is shining, where the sun is shining, and leave this fake democracy, because that's the only thing that's gonna save us. The only thing. If we break it up and then rebuild, because clearly all the countries have a wish to unite or to cooperate in a greater form than just Schengen or Benelux. And the current state of affairs in the world clearly shows that we Europeans also need to form a bloc if we want to survive economically as well. So it makes sense, but this EU monster, this totalitarian dictatorship, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. A dictatorship is always short-lived. Yeah, sure, you can be a dictator for all I care for a few hundred years. Think Romans. An emperor, nearly a god, and everyone has to bow for the emperor and its will and its whims, right? But hey, again, as sure as the sun will rise and go down, those empires crumble. They will crumble. And this empire is crumbling too. Now it's up to you. If you, European, American, so-called free Westerner, will give it its final push. Bring down the walls of Jericho, right? Something like that, I think, is a appropriate, how you call that, parallel? Bring down the walls of Jericho. Pump. Going around. Well, let's bring down the walls of the EU. Have a nice day.